Welcome, everyone, to Constructive Uncoupling. I'm Judy Weigel, your amicable divorce expert. Why? Because that's all I do, amicable divorces. My company is Divorce Resource Incorporated in Los Angeles. I mediate and I file for amicable divorces. Today, we have Kathryn Ford. Welcome, Kathryn.
Thank you, Judy.
We're going to talk about the transformation out of divorce so that you can live your best life after this life-changing event called divorce. Kathryn Ford lives an excellent life. She smiles profusely, bounces when she walks, inspires when she talks, and generally provides infectious joy wherever she goes. Kathryn, was this always who you were?
Oh, Judy, thank you so much for that. First of all, you know how much I love you, and I think your work is so important in the world. I have always been a very positive person, but it's been a real journey that I've been on. And maybe I will just share a little bit of that.
I think it's really important because when you told me about your story, I was so impressed. I wanted to get to know you more and be around you more, so please.
Oh, thank you, Judy. Well, it all began almost 30 years ago, actually. In May, it'll be 30 years ago. I was 26 years old, busy climbing the corporate ladder, and I was driving home one day from work and had a really bad headache. Didn't think much of it, took a couple aspirin, went to bed, and would end up going blind in my left eye. So, of course, I was devastated. And I was living in Minnesota at the time, so thankfully, Mayo Clinic was close, about an hour and a half away. So I made an appointment, went down to see the experts, and they gave me the shocking news that I had multiple sclerosis. So you can imagine a 26-year-old woman, just her whole life in front of her, everything just felt like it was shattered in an instant. The nurses and doctors were coming in from a place of love, sharing with me all of the horrible things that they said were about to happen to me. And they left, and I'm so grateful that at 26 years old, I had the presence of mind to say, no, that is not what's going to happen to me. That's not how my life is going to unfold. I'm going to be a medical miracle. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I just knew in my heart that that's who I was going to be. So I set out and began researching what was happening all over the world that really allowed people to live a life of excellence regardless of the circumstances, the conditions that they were facing. And I just started using it all on me, trying it. This worked, that didn't work. And then I stumbled across Dr. Bernie Siegel's work. He is a leading authority in the world on the mind-body connection. So I began practicing more of those types of tools and methods and was actually doing quite well. Well, fast forward 22 years later, I found out I had been misdiagnosed. So another shock. And the actual diagnosis now is considered to be far worse than MS. Yes.
Oh my.
It's called neuromyelitis optica, or NMO. So first of all, I thought, what could be worse than MS?
What could be worse with something you've never heard about?
Exactly. It's very rare. And so I was still living in Minnesota at the time. Thankfully, I'm a researcher, so I found out that now at Mayo, there's a doctor who's a leading authority in the world on this very rare condition, NMO. So I made an appointment with him. He walked into the exam room, started walking out, turned around to walk out, looked back at me and said, "Are you Kathryn Ford?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Oh my gosh, you don't even look like someone who's had MS for 22 years, let alone this worst condition. I want to know exactly what you're doing because obviously, look at you, it's working. Besides the medication that you've been on." So I kind of laughed and said, I'm going to take that as a compliment, doctor, because I haven't been hearing very good news with this whole misdiagnosis and something more severe and all of that. And he said, "I want you to take it as a compliment. You should. This is amazing."
Okay, hold on. Were you able to function and work in this time? What was that like?
I was very ill at certain points. I actually was as I was on this journey. But you kind of just You just do it. You push through it. It's your new normal. When you don't feel well, that's right. Who I am. And I made the best of it along the way. So I began sharing all of this with him, and he looked at me and he said, "You've got to get this work out into the world because everyone has some sort of dis-ease. Yours has already cellularized in your body. Other people have been in a series of toxic relationships, or they're going through an uncoupling process, or maybe they can't seem to make ends meet. It has to do with their time and money freedom, or they haven't found their purpose in life." And we had this amazing discussion about the mind-body connection and how everything in our life affects everything else. And I told him through my research, I discovered that when we have a challenge going on in our life, we can't just look at that slice of our life. For instance, for me, I couldn't just look at that slice of the health part of my life. Right. I had to take a really good hard look at my time and money freedom. The work I was doing, I was thriving in. I was an HR executive, and I loved it, doing a lot of high-level coaching, a lot of employee relations. It was my relationship category, Judy, that was suffering. And I'll get to that in a minute. But the doctor said to me, "Well, this is amazing. You've got to get this out into the world because you can help so many people, not just people with health challenges." And I said, "Doctor, I've really just been focused on saving myself. I haven't even thought about that." And he said, "Well, there's one more thing I have to share with you." And he asked me, "When is your next injection?" And I said, "Well, it's tonight." And at that point of those 22 years, I had been on 16 and a half years of a chemotherapy drug for MS. So when you asked me about functioning and how I felt, I was basically on this drug for 16 and a half years that made me feel like I had the flu. And I just pushed through it and functioned, and that was my new normal. Well, he looked at me, Judy, and he said, "No." He said, "You need to stop those injections immediately. They're harmful to someone with your diagnosis." Honestly, I thought that he energetically punched me in the stomach. I was sick to my stomach when he said that because those injections were so hard to stay on. And now he's telling me that they actually were harmful. I had a course of emotions running through me. You can't even imagine. I was upset. I was angry. I was resentful. And then it hit me. And I had my eyes closed at this time. I think he held his breath the whole time because he didn't know how I was going to react. I opened up my eyes and I said, "You know what, doctor? I have a very powerful mind, and I've been developing that power for the last 22 years, and I believed those injections were helping me, not hurting me." Mm-hmm. Oh my. That whole mind-body connection, right? I believed so deeply that those were actually helping me. He pointed at me and he said, "You know what? We're sticking with that." And I said, "We are, because I'm sticking with the fact that I believed in the injections and they didn't hurt me."
Okay, so now you can believe something differently.
Exactly, because had I stayed with all of those toxic emotions in me after he shared that with me, I know that I would not be sitting here across from you today in the condition that I am. So I released it. I said, "You know what? I know they didn't hurt me." And I used some tools that I work with my clients on to get myself back in alignment with perfect health, which is the space that I live in and have lived in for the last now almost 30 years, even in the face of a diagnosis. So there's a story behind the story, though, that I want to share with you. And that was that toxic relationship I was in. Extremely toxic marriage. And Dr. Bernie Siegel, who ended up writing the foreword to my book, Be Well, A 7-Step System for Radical Healing, actually says when we have a diagnosis, we need to look back a year or two prior to the diagnosis to see and look for clues. What has been happening in your life? There's usually something that will give you a clue to why it's cellularized. Somewhere it showed up in a diagnosis, in a dis-ease in your body. And for me, I was a newlywed, basically.
Okay, so when you were initially diagnosed, you were married.
I had just, about a year and a half to 2 years.
Right.
And almost from the start, that relationship began to go south.
Okay.
My former husband had issues with rage in our home. There were other very horrible things, a lot of emotional abuse. Things began showing up, indiscretions, problems with integrity, things like that he promised he would never do again. And there was that going on, and then the whole factor of how I was raised, the traditions that I was raised in did not allow for divorce. And so I was basically up against, you know what, this was a decision you made, and you need to figure out how to make it work. And so I was becoming more and more and more frustrated, more and more just feelings of my life being out of control, and there was nothing I could do. And I just kept trying harder and harder. And as I was trying harder,
you were getting sicker.
Yes, and it seemed to become, as I was trying harder, things were actually getting worse. But I stayed in that marriage for 23 years. Way too long. Yes.
And at the end of the 23 years, where were you in your health issues?
My health issues, interestingly enough, this misdiagnosis came about a year after my divorce. So you can see that
fascinating.
all of the mind-body work I had done, even in the face of this highly toxic relationship, really was powerful and really worked. Now, I must share with you, too, my former husband had issues, mental health issues that were untreated. He refused to get treatment, and so they were escalating at the same time. I finally did get the courage up to ask for the divorce. I had worked on modifying my own beliefs as an adult and gave myself permission to uncouple at that time because I realized the marriage was over a long time ago. So it actually, he was not for the divorce at all and was resisting it. The perfect storm happened while we were still living in the same home, going through this divorce process. He called me one morning from work, and he was let go. So, of course, the perfect storm. His wife is leaving him, and he does not want it. He's now lost his job. And the whole thing ended that day in a gun incident. So as you can see, I'm still here, so it's really great.
Still here?
He is, yes, everything ended up fine, thankfully, to the professionals in the community that we lived in. So that is the good news. So another lesson is just not to wait too long.
If I can possibly interject something, because what you said is so interesting, and I run into it quite frequently when I'm dealing with divorcing couples. It's the perfect storm. Somebody loses their job, there are children involved, the other spouse maybe wasn't working, that was part of the deal, or was only working part-time because the primary breadwinning spouse could really carry the financial load. They're about to get divorced or in the middle of filing, and then the primary breadwinner loses their job. This is fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. And it was at that moment when I realized, okay, I survived physically the illness. I was also determined to survive emotionally. The whole divorce process, the whole gun incident, everything. And I claimed for myself 10 years ago when this happened that I was going to make the rest of my life the best of my life. I know, it's so exciting. I can still see myself that day when I said, no, I have so much time left on this planet. I'm not going to focus on the 23 years as a negative. I learned a lot of lessons. I'm the person I am today because of that.
Yes.
And I am going to go forward and create magnificence for myself. And it was Steve Jobs, I believe, who said we can all look back and connect the dots. And I certainly can in my life. I was this high-level executive in HR doing a lot of employee relations, which is high-level coaching.
Yes.
And at the same time on this health journey. So in 2011, I basically merged the two together, founded Excellence Institute, and now I help people all over the world create the most amazing life for themselves no matter what they've been through.
So, before we go into the Excellence Institute, which everybody has to hear about, the point of transformation is one of the most exciting points in our lives. And if we allow this to happen, we all get to have points of transformation. What has to precede it is the will to want to transform our lives and the knowledge and hope that it's possible. Am I right or wrong?
You are absolutely right.
Cool.
It's so powerful what you said. And the word allow, you mentioned that word, allow, is so important.
As did you.
Yes. we when we allow and we see that we deserve the best, the very best that life has to offer, there are just certain tools we can use to put in place to make it all happen.
Okay, and you also said something else a few minutes ago that I think is very important for our listeners, and that is when divorce enters the lexicon of your thinking.
Yes.
And it might be the only option to living a healthy life. Mm-hmm. We have all these other considerations to go through. We have what our personal philosophy has always been, and we have to research why. We have our family to think about because we do have to interact with them. We can't live our lives for our family, but we do interact with them. Then there's our religion. Then there's our culture. Mm-hmm. And so all of these things come into play when the idea of divorce enters our lives. And what I say to people, and I'd like you to speak to this a second, is it's okay that you choose what's right for you while being as respectful as you can to those other entities in our life. How did you handle your family?
You are absolutely right, Judy, 100%. And it's a beautiful energy of harmony that we can actually achieve. And that's one of the things I help my clients do when they're uncoupling. Because in my family, if I just take myself as an example, my husband, my former husband, I should say, was just he was highly skillful when it came to other people. So if you were to ask someone in my community, if you were to ask someone in my family, my former husband appeared to be the father and the husband of the year. So you can imagine my family was in shock, not only from that, because he had built a very strong relationship with my family, but also from the religion standpoint. So I had a couple of things to navigate there, to be able to have a conversation with my parents and my family about what was really going on in my life.
There's the inside marriage and the outside marriage.
Absolutely.
How we appear to the outside world as individuals is quite often different than how we appear to our family inside. Mm-hmm. And mental illness is so prevalent, and we're just, as a country, as a community, just starting to talk about it.
Yes.
It was buried for so long. And so those who need that help can't really get that help because it's a shameful thing to talk about. And people who need help can't identify that they need help, which is another barrier.
Exactly. And this was 10 years ago. So although we've come quite a ways in the last 10 years, we still have opportunity when it comes to this, definitely. Yeah. And to make sure that people are supported in the way that they need to be supported when it comes to that. And not just the person, but the family too.
Right. And you can't blame or get mad at the person who you believe to have a mental health challenge. They were either born that way, or the seeds of that genetically were encouraged by the environment that we grew up in.
Yes.
And so that just...
Absolutely. And so I love what the Course in Miracles, the beautiful,
Marianne Williamson.
Yes, and Marianne's interpretation is so beautiful too. And it says, all acts are either love or a call for love. So that's what my former husband was doing at that time. His whole life was really falling apart, if you think of it.
Yes.
Right? His wife is leaving, his family. We do have a son together, so that was being, upset in his mind too. And then, of course, his work in the world was going away. So this was a man really reaching out for love. It was a call for love.
And if he needed help to start with, he really needed help now that his life was changing. And Kathryn, and this is how we're going to segue into the Excellence Institute. When I confirm a meeting in my office for either filing or mediating, the last sentence is, divorce is a new beginning. I really mean it. I'm a product of an amicable marriage, and it was the saddest year of my life, but it made me really turn inward and reevaluate myself and pull myself out of the sadness. Again, totally amicable, we could talk, doesn't matter. Life-changing, and life-changing things come seriously into our lives. So divorce is a new beginning. Is that a good segue for the Excellence Institute?
Yes, Judy.
Please share.
Absolutely brilliant, yes. And I believe it is a second chance to really live the life that you were meant to live and to bring in everything you would love. That's the number one thing that I just enjoy so much asking my clients, what would you love? Not what do you want to settle for, what would you like, but what would you love in the areas of your health, your wealth, and the love in your life if you choose so. And you can imagine after everything I went through, I was not even interested in a relationship for a while. I knew that I had healing to do. So I knew that I had things that I needed to transform in my inside of myself first before I would be ready for that. And so that's some of the first pieces that we embark on. And it's so exciting when you realize what's out there for you and to take everything that happened and see it as learning and to be able to repattern the things going into your future. And the first thing is to get really clear on what is it that you would love. We're not used to asking ourselves that and dreaming and imagining as adults, right? When we were little children, one day we were a firefighter, the next day we were a ballerina, whatever we wanted. And then we started to lose that sense as we, got into formal education, and pretty soon as an adult, that's not really looked highly upon to dream. Well, I give my clients the permission to dream because we must imagine it first. And when we can imagine it, then we have all kinds of tools to go after it. But full spectrum wealth is what I'm all about. And that's what Excellence Institute is all about. It's about creating a life filled with an abundance of health, wealth, and love.
And wealth meaning wealth of love, wealth
Absolutely.
Of social connection.
Abundance. Yes, everything.
Wealth of happiness.
Wealth of happiness.
Not just money, but but money is good because we need it to live, and we don't always have the right relationship to money, do we?
No, and that's another thing that I help my clients transform, because when we have the right relationship with money, we are able to open our vessel to receiving more. It makes all the difference. So I help people work smarter rather than harder. How do you just learn how to live in a different way that attracts easily more money? Has everything to do with our thinking.
It's fascinating to me. I've always looked at people who, maybe not billionaires, I happen to not have personal relationships with billionaires, but millionaires. Mm-hmm. I mean, in this business, I meet very wealthy people and people that don't have a lot of means. Mm-hmm. But I was always fascinated, even before this business, how do some people just make money? It just seems like they make money, whatever they touch turns to gold. And I'm wondering if it's attitude.
It has everything to do with attitude and also the belief system that we have. So it all starts in our childhood, a lot of it. Worthiness, yes, is true. Our net worth, studies show, is equal to our self-worth. So that's something
Say it one
big.
more time.
Our net worth is equal to our self-worth. So that's one of the big things that I work with my clients on, because we go after that self-worth piece so that we dial that up, and absolutely everything begins to look brighter in your life, including the financial abundance.
Okay, this makes me feel good, and I know that's true. I can connect with this because as a normal human being, I have gone through my highs and lows as well. Mm-hmm. And if I don't feel good about myself, my productivity isn't there like it should be, and my creativity isn't there to keep growing.
Yes.
Yes?
Absolutely.
Okay, so how did the Excellence Institute come to be born?
Well, as I said, in 2011, I realized what the doctors had said and what other people were communicating with me on, and just wanting to know what I was doing to be, they looking at where I was and where I was headed, even in 2011, after just a short period of time after that whole, uncoupling, gun incident, and all of that, I was already beginning to thrive. And so they were saying, we want some of what you have. And I connected the dots, realized, you know what, I had been in this high-level coaching position at the corporate level.
That's right, in human resources.
Yes, I'm going to bring it into working with the independent world. Yeah.
What do you do with the Excellence Institute? Describe.
So we have several different membership levels, and it's all people living the life of their dreams and creating that. So it's wonderful. We have a common shared language. We have ways of doing things, ways of being, right? So if you and I were working together, Judy, I would be gaining information and gathering information from you to help you put together your personal passion prescription. What would Judy love in the areas of her health and well-being? And maintaining youthfulness is a big piece of that too nowadays, and it happens naturally because we have an inner pharmacy. If you're happy and thriving, that inner pharmacy is kicking out beautiful sparkling chemicals that every cell in your body is being bathed in. If you're having too much stress or feeling that maybe you're in a toxic relationship or something.
Or a toxic job.
Toxic job, yes.
That's a relationship.
That's a relationship, too. Absolutely.
Toxic friendships that are dominating your life, or family relationships that may be dominating your life in a negative way.
Definitely. Yes. Your inner pharmacy is kicking out too much cortisol, which is very aging. And every cell in your body is being bathed in it, so you can imagine, right, what is happening. So we work on that. We work on the relationship category. What would you love? Not just with a significant other, but with your family, friends. A lot of people are just looking for close friendships these days, I find, too. So how do we bring those into our life? And then, of course, with your work in the world. And have you found your passion in life? We put it all together, and that's what we go after. And I have lots and lots of tools and practices and principles to make that happen. But the beautiful thing is every member of Excellence Institute is doing the exact same thing. So great friendships are made and other things because we're all working on creating the best life ever.
So do you work individually with people? Do you have classes? Do people who are members of the Excellence Institute meet each other?
Yes,
and how do they do that?
They have the opportunity to do that. There are different membership levels. So we have a beautiful group membership that's just amazing. That is, we study together once a week. And because I coach people all over the world, it's very easy to be a part of that. It's just a conferenced-in call where I do my teaching. Then a lot of people want to have some one-on-one time with me too. And of course, then I can really help them take off quickly. And that would be the platinum level. So they get both the group where
they get to personally meet you?
Yeah, they do have the opportunity.
On the platinum level?
Yes, okay. And we Zoom and we do all of those things. And then I have retreats too. So people will fly into LA here.
Retreats.
Yes, beautiful long weekend retreats that we do and gatherings. And so that's a lot of fun too. And then I have different experiences. There's 6-month that you can be in membership levels, right. And then year-long. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So if somebody wanted to get their feet wet, can they go on a retreat? Just go on a retreat just to see what it's like? Or do you have to have education with you first to make the retreat beneficial?
That's a great question. Yes, first you do need a little bit of education, but we do have gatherings that they can become a part of and go on. And I offer complimentary strategy sessions too, where they can actually spend an hour with me finding out what their major initiative is. Maybe it is the uncoupling, right? Maybe it is, wow, I want to create the next best chapter of my life. And then I give them some tools and practices and principles. Even at that initial meeting, it's my gift to them to be able to begin working towards that.
Because I'm assuming the people listening to this podcast are people either in the middle of divorce, ready to start a divorce, ending a divorce. Do you have any special packages or focus for people in divorce?
Actually, any one of the packages is ideal.
Okay.
It's just it depends on what they would love and how much of a deep dive do they want to take, really, and how serious are they about creating this next most amazing chapter in their life.
Okay. Last question before we give people the information to get in touch with you. And that is, what if you can see, even though you're not a therapist and I'm not a therapist, we can actually see when people need therapy, which is like all of us need therapy at some points in time. And it's much more accepted now in society. But do you ever give those referrals out if you think maybe therapy would be a good component to the prescription of their better health?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I have a lot of clients that have both. So they'll have a therapist and they'll have me. We work on very different things. So I don't cross over into therapy. I'm all about moving you forward.
Right.
And so there definitely are times when people would need a therapist, and it's a completely different aspect and different.
It is, and I would assume that when you're working with somebody, to be able to define what their passion is and how they would like their life to be, sometimes people just have to get in touch with their roots first to see why they are having the experiences, the thoughts, the emotions that they're having, so that they can clear the brush, so to speak.
Yes.
And realize what their passion is.
Definitely. And so
that's really smart.
One of the things that I do is I pick up on when we realize, oh, okay, this is a paradigm. That maybe this money struggle is a paradigm. Or maybe attracting a relationship like I did initially that was highly toxic.
Money is a learned behavior,
and money
too. We watch how our parents made money, and we either can overcome it if it's a bad experience, or we accept it and follow in those footsteps, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And we don't even know we're doing it.
No, it gets laid down in our subconscious, which everything in our subconscious will make sure that it's right. So if I was told as a little girl, money doesn't grow on trees. And so I learned that, and there's some struggle pattern with that whole concept too, and other things. And so that gets laid down in our subconscious mind. So what I help clients do is then bring that out, shine the light of awareness on it. It's a paradigm. It's simply a paradigm that's keeping us stuck. So until we notice that paradigm that happened in our childhood, we are making decisions from that place today as an adult. We can be 50, 60, 40, 30, 70 years old and still living from that place of being the little child who heard those things.
Right, which is not our true selves.
No, not our true selves. Yeah.
Excellent.
So we help people release those. And that is extraordinary when that happens. That's when your life completely turns around.
That's when you can live your excellent life.
Exactly.
So that people can now live their excellent life. How do they get in touch with you?
So a couple of different ways, Judy. You can go out to KathrynFord.com, and that's KathrynFord.com, and you can schedule an appointment with me, that complimentary strategy session, Breakthrough to Abundance strategy session that I'm offering all of your listeners, Judy. So it's a $650 value. I have certain amount of time each week allotted for those, so they can just go right into Calendly and schedule that, or they can reach me at 310-450-9993, and we'll get that scheduled then. That's
one more time.
310-450-9993. And I also have beautiful Be Well daily affirmations that are my gift to the world as well, and you can sign up for those on my website. They come into your inbox, your email inbox, Monday through Friday. It's a great short affirmation to get your day started on the right foot, and they actually help dial up your self-worth as well.
Kathryn, I'm so happy that I met you.
Oh, I feel the same about you, Judy. I adore you.
You have brought light into my life and in our listeners as well. So thank you so much for the time you took to come here.
Oh, you're so very welcome.